using sign language came natural to me, when I was a baby. And it was also my mother tongue. People always think there's only one sign language around the world. That is not true. We have more than 300 sign languages. When I went to the States, I realized how persons with disabilities had this entire, support coming from the government through the American Disability Act. There were technologies that provided online sign language interpretation. Connect Here has been so passionate about building the Google Translate for sign language. We have built a model that can translate sign language to text just using your webcam camera.
Millions in the deaf community face barriers every day, not because of ability, but because the world wasn't built for them. Our guest today, Azima Dhanjee, is the co-founder of Connect Here, Pakistan's largest disability tech startup focused on the inclusions of persons with disability.
Also, being a female entrepreneur, I've been questioned a lot of the times if I'm doing this out of emotion. In Pakistan, we use something called PSL. And it's not the cricket wala PSL, it is Pakistani Sign Language.
Okay.
And in Pakistani Sign Language, the sign for girl is like this. Girl, because in our culture, the girl wears a nose pin, so girl.
Recognized by Forbes, the Diana Award, and Draper University, Azima is proving that accessibility isn't just a social cause. It's a billion-dollar opportunity.
Your idea, your solution would pivot so much. I think you should be more married to the problem that you're trying to solve. I think the kind of journey my sign language interpreters go through every single day is
Azima,
yes.
what is disability tech? Can you tell us more about this particular domain?
Thank you for asking that. I think nobody recognizes that there's so much potential of using technology to ensure that persons with disability also truly become a part of our society. And that's truly the work that Connect Here does, uses technology at front. And disability tech is all about how we could use the technology that's happening, growing, to ensure persons with disabilities are also equal citizens of our society.
And how did you actually decide that you're going to build something as amazing as Connect Here? And what was the starting point? What ignited that, basically?
It is so crazy. I think people don't really realize that sometimes in your head and in your heart, Allah puts in this thing that this is something you need to do. And you're so constantly thinking about it. And you're also questioning yourself that, why me? Why am I the only one thinking about it, especially in a country and in an era where no one else is thinking about it? I think something similar happened to me. Of course, I come from a deaf family, so the community was not new to me. Both my parents are deaf, my aunts, my uncles. We're predominantly a very, deaf inclusive, and so many people in my family are deaf. So naturally, using sign language came natural to me, when I was a baby. And it was also my mother tongue, right? Like, it's the first language I ever learned to communicate with my parents. So it was not rocket science for me to think about how, we can make a society where deaf community can be included. However, I never thought that I would be the one to take this step because A, I don't come from a business family, a family of innovators, or B, I never had that close contact with technology. However, as I was growing up, I just felt immense need of educating people about my parents. I think it was as simple as that I just wished more of my friends, my colleagues, my teachers could communicate with mama, daddy. And when I saw that there's a huge gap in the society because of it, there are some questions that probably just come out of curiosity about how to interact with persons with disability, how can they actually, become a part of the society. Even questions as simple as, people asking me how my parents are able to parent me. So it was a shocking news for them that even, persons with disabilities can become parents and have a very normal lifestyle. I was raised hearing all of these questions, answering all of these questions, and just hoping that one day someone is going to use technology to support the community. And I remember the conversations I used to have with my brother when I was 14, 15, 16 years old, where I would tell Bhaiya that I want to go and work with someone so they're able to support the community. And I was finding it hard to, get people who'd be as interested and as passionate about using technology. Of course, we had brilliant schools for persons with disabilities, for the deaf community, but no one really using technology for that. And one day it just came to me that if no one else is doing it, that does not mean you can't do it. Of course, this was just a statement. It did not come with like what steps to take. However, one by one, I think the best thing I did was to reach out to people, talk to my friends, gather idea, and realize that I need to start with something that could create awareness. So we started a Facebook page. We had to come up with a name for that Facebook page. So we came up with a pun. It's connect here, but also here. So it's about connecting people together and also connecting the deaf community to the hearing community. And this was June of 2017, and it's been 7.5 years to the journey. We're just constantly, I think, learning more. When we started this journey, sabse pehle people were like, oh, it's an NGO, like that's the best way to go about it. It's something you're doing for the welfare of the society. So, fighting with that concept and notion that, hey, you can also build a social enterprise, a business that can do good for the society, but also sustain itself. And then to like, how can we use technology in the whole game? Being called health tech for a very long time, and then making people realize that including persons with disability is not only about health. It's not a medical way of looking at persons with disability. We need to think about the societal definition of persons with disability, which is basically that it's the society that creates limitation for persons with disability and not that they have limitations on their own. And I think that became the basis of Connect Here. And we made people realize that in every aspect of our lives, either it be if we're going for a doctor appointment, to a bank for getting our accounts open, or even if you're going for a job interview, going to the movie theater to watch a movie, literally anything in our lives that you and I are able to do, we need to think about how can we make it accessible for persons with disabilities as well. And I think so many of these thoughts in my life that, kept on happening, I kept on realizing those actually translated into how Connect Here is today.
Wow. Wow, this is really, really, I mean, this is the truest example of how you should go about solving a problem where you have been the customer or closest to the customer, right? So that's like a textbook sort of like, intersection that you just went on, and that's why you have that success and the life that you have been able to touch. How do you compare when it comes to this particular segment? How do you compare Pakistan with other countries in the world? Considering we are having this conversation for the global audience. So yeah, how do you compare that?
So I think the first time I realized and learned that my parents could have had a better life was when I went to United States as an exchange student when I was 15 years old. When I went to the States, I realized how persons with disabilities had this entire, support coming from the government through the American Disability Act. I saw that there were technologies that provided online sign language interpretation. So something that we do at Connect Here today, I saw that years ago, a decade ago, when I went to the States, and I saw that how the deaf community can just go to any place without having to rely on their family members and just have a conversation when they get there using technology. So I think that was my first exposure, realizing that societal definition of persons with disability, that hey, it's our country that's confiding they're stopping my parents from going to their max level and not them themselves. And that ignited the thoughts in me that what sort of changes can we see in Pakistan. And when I came back, I realized we had really good institutions, really great schools, but once a person with disability graduates, what's next for them? It's about creating that societal awareness, bringing people together to realize more about this community. So I think in the States, I saw it a lot. Then when I was researching, I saw that In the UK, there's a lot of work that's been done for that. However, I mean, I would definitely say that today, like, if you would have asked me 7 years ago, my answer would have been different. But Alhamdulillah, today I see that Pakistan's actually doing better than a lot of countries out there. I was recently in Turkey and I was talking about the technology that we have. We actually got an award from TRT, a communicator award, because our technology is supporting communication for the deaf community. And when I was receiving that award, in that same ceremony, there was actually another CODA. A CODA is a child of deaf adult. So it's a huge community. So I am a CODA myself because my parents are deaf. So there was a CODA who came up to me. I mean, we have never met in our lives, right? We didn't even know the same language. She spoke Turkish. I could only do English and Urdu. So then she talked to me in sign language. And of course, there are differences between our signs, but we were able to connect. And she told me this, that, you know, in our country, we don't have the technology and the service that you guys have in Pakistan. That made her realize that, you know, there are countries in the world who are still behind. It's good that in Pakistan we can see more happening. The government is involved, you know, the corporate sector is involved. However, there's so much more that can be done, 110%.
And why do you think it's not at the, like in talks? Why is it not a priority, do you think?
In our country?
Or even globally, as you're talking about. So there is what? 430 million, the stat that I have?
Yeah, I mean, right now...
Just the people with the hearing disability,
So
right?
WHO says 16% of our global population has some level of disability. It was 15% until last year. It has grown immensely. And 80% of this population resides in developing countries. And, you know, Pakistan is definitely one of them. So I think, you know, in Pakistan, luckily now there are talks happening around it because they realize it's a missed economic opportunity as well, because there are so many, as simple as so many unbanked persons with disability. So our financial sector is now realizing that there's so many persons with disability without bank accounts, but they come from families who has money, or they have, you know, they're doing jobs, or they're doing some sort of business. So why aren't we making them our customers? So it's a very business case oriented thought as well. And also to realize that till what point, because in Pakistan, you know, we have a huge charity culture. We all give zakat during Ramzan as well. So a lot of this donation and charity money also goes towards, you know, marginalized group, and persons with disability makes up one of the largest marginalized groups around the world even. So in Pakistan, people were seeing that, you know, it was all about charity, but they weren't becoming a part of our economy. And also we need to realize that it's not only persons with disabilities who are disadvantaged, it's also the lives attached to them. So, you know, even their family members, their children, they're also disadvantaged. They are also not able to get out of that poverty line because you're not providing persons with disability the right kind of opportunities. So alhamdulillah, now we see in Pakistan, there are a lot of talks around it. Of course, in the major cities. So, you know, in Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad, there are talks happening. However, globally, why is this not a topic? I mean, of course, as a CODA myself, belonging to this community, it makes me really, really sad. I think we just need to push it more. We need to have more advocates talking about it. It's as sad as, you know, what has happened in the United States right now. You know, the new government coming in and saying that we need to remove DEI. So DEI is now not a priority. And all of the funds and all of the things that were happening around diversity, equity, and inclusion is now becoming a question mark. Do we need to support it or do we not need to support it? And it's sad that, you know, minority groups and persons with disability, they become, you know, an option. Like, oh, if someone's coming in, they feel passionate about it, they will do it. And if they don't feel passionate about it, they're like, oh, you know, if you want to cut budgets, this is one department that we need to cut. It's just a very sad reality. In fact, you know, I mean, I would really like to quote, a couple of days ago, I was in a session which was focused towards disability inclusion in Pakistan, and most of the people were from the community. So they were persons with disability themselves. And one of the people I really respect and see as mentor, he made me realize that even in Pakistan, the Disability Act, the first ordinance, did not come until 1981 because, you know, at that time we had a government coming in, and the president at that time actually had a child himself who had hearing loss. So she was deaf herself. And that made him realize that, oh, in Pakistan, we have no support for this community. And that's where, the first of schools came into being. We had an ordinance in play. And now we see so much happening in the country because of that. So I think one of the biggest reason why globally we don't see it is because it doesn't happen until you personally feel it. And people also don't realize that most of the disability actually happens in each of our lives later, in the later stages. You start losing your hearing, there are a lot of possibility of losing your sight. You can get into an accident and something can happen. Or jab tak hota nahi, if something doesn't happen to a person, I think till that point people don't think about it or prioritize it. It's just the sad reality.
It is very sad, actually. And as you were talking to me, my brain was, because just this morning I was doing a workshop and I was talking about uh, us human beings over the last 250, 300 years. We have lost the connection between the philosophy and science. And again, I was quoting Dr. Ian McGilchrist that he talks about right hemisphere and left hemisphere, right? And philosophy is associated with your right hemisphere and science is associated with your left hemisphere. So the knowledge then, what we knew was the true essence of knowledge. Today we have information and we think it's knowledge. What does that ultimately does is it loses our connection with that human element, that it has to get to the stage where people understand that as an economic opportunity to do the right thing by the human lives who by not choice happen to be in that situation, and then you class it in a bucket of as if it's a health issue, when in reality it's not, which you just very beautifully
It's
articulated.
actually a billion-dollar missed opportunity by not including person with disability. IFC did a huge report on that. Whoever is listening it, they can look it up as well. But they say that 16% of our working population is persons with disabilities who are unemployed. So it's a huge figure, right? Like people who we are not including in our economy, and we're making them dependent. So they always stay below poverty line. Even my family is a great example of that, because we come from a very, very humble background. And I always tell people this, that if my parents were not empowered and given job opportunity, I don't think I would have had the opportunity to study at IBA or to do the work that I do today. So it's literally changing the entire quality of life of a family by empowering persons with disability. And it's just a sad reality that we always look at persons with disability as a burden, but we don't realize the kind of potential, kind of difference they can truly bring into families as well. I think it's time to change narrative. It's time to look at your surrounding and see what you personally can do, right? It's not only just, Amin's job because he has invited me to the podcast and want more people to know about it, or Azima's job because she's in this industry. It's every one of ours job to think about this topic and do something about it as well. We don't really have to have someone in our family who has a disability to think about it. It's a topic, it's of urgency for each one of us. Just like, female inclusion is. It's such a huge topic. We see waves happening in it, but we want more to happen as well. It's similar to that when we talk about persons with disability, and we're glad that through Connect Here we're able to do it. But I think there's so much more to do, and technology truly allows you to do that.
You see, I have had personal experiences, so not particularly people with hearing sort of disability, but in Ireland, when we were running businesses, we would be the first one to go to these NLNs, or national learning, where people with disability go. So when I say people with disability, somebody could be on the spectrum of autism, or somebody could have anxiety issues, or somebody who cannot integrate. So I have had the opportunity to be working with those individuals. And what I realized, right, is that first, because they have to actually work harder to have the basics, right, which is being given to every other individual who don't have to go through, they go even all in to just, taking the pride and how they actually can be counted on. And once you have actually empowered them.
Absolutely.
So when you talk about the one aspect of it is that, you're not banking on, or, you're not capitalizing on that opportunity to make them a part of this economic machine as a society per se, right? but at the same time, the quality that you can get out of it, only if you were to actually take the lens off where you know that it's a health issue, or you know, like because they have certain disability they're not going to make up for in other areas. It's sort of like that kind of narrative that I was thinking when you were talking about it, piecing it with my own experiences. But you just said something so interesting when you were in Turkey. You said that sign languages were a bit different. Tell me
Yes.
more about that, actually.
Yeah, it's so interesting that people always think there's only one sign language around the world. That is not true, because we have more than 300 sign languages around the world.
Get out.
Yeah,
Really?
really.
Oh my
Yes.
God.
And you know why? Like, the reason makes sense. Globalization just so happened later in our, lives, in our forefathers' lives. But before that, even like spoken languages, they were built based on culture, migration, movement. And it wasn't until globalization where we realized that, oh, English is a language, or Turkish is a language, or Arabic is a language. It really happened later in our lives when we talk about the entire globe. Similarly, persons with disabilities and the deaf community has always existed, right? They have always been a part of a society. So when the deaf community, before globalization, were trying to communicate, they built their own languages based on culture. And I'll give you a very good example of that, right? So in Pakistan, we use something called PSL. And it's not the cricket wala PSL, it is Pakistani Sign Language.
Okay.
And in Pakistani Sign Language, the sign for girl is like this, girl, because in our culture, the girl wears a nose pin, so girl. And what do you think would be for boys or men?
No idea.
Okay, so in PSL, in Pakistani Sign Language, it's the mustache. Yeah. But when you talk about ASL, which is American Sign Language, girl is signed like this, the jawline, and the boy is signed like this, boy. Because like cap, so boy. So they were all based on culture, and our cultures were so different that after the world got globalized, we realized there's so many different sign languages. We do have something being built up called international sign language that's used in international conferences, or just like how English has so much power around the world, American Sign Language is used a lot. However, every country does have their own sign language, and we use Pakistani Sign Language.
It makes me so happy because you just educated me on something I didn't even know, right? And
No, I love doing that. I'm sure everyone listening to it would be shocked at this point. And people also might strongly feel about, hey, this should not have existed. We need to have one sign language. Agreed, like that would have made things simpler. But, sign language carries so much depth and history. And it's the history of the deaf community. So, just like we wouldn't feel good if someone comes to me and tells me, okay, stop talking in Urdu, you can only talk in English. I wouldn't feel good about it because Urdu is, close to me. That's where my entire childhood was. So just like that, deaf people carry their own sign language with so much pride. However, just like I said, if I go to Turkey, when I was there, if somebody speaks to me in Turkish, I would not be able to get it at all. However, Turkish Sign Language, I was still able to get because, there's so many gestures, expressions. So it's still easier to use sign language as compared to spoken language, I would say. That's my vote.
That's just so fascinating. The overlapping is a lot more because certain things will be cultural, but certain things probably will be universal.
Yeah.
So it'll probably make it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
This is what I'm thinking.
That's certain things definitely are. Just like if you want to tell someone that I'm going, I'm coming, I'm hungry, I'm sleepy, it's all the same, right?
Yeah.
And one sign that I love is the sign for love, right? So it's like this.
Yeah.
It's literally like ILU. And this is international. Everyone uses it. Love.
Okay.
Yes.
That's so beautiful, right?
Thank you.
So what are the main challenges in your experience actually, are there for people with hearing disability when it comes to community integration, when it comes to education, when it comes to, per se, getting a job, right? What are those challenges?
I think there are two challenges that I see as the biggest. Number one is just the lack of awareness. people without disability are never exposed to this world. They don't know what sign language is. They don't know what this community is all about. And it is all because we don't have this education in our educational system. So when you're growing up, your schools never teach you about this topic, right? And the schools are not even mainstreamed. So they never see kids with disabilities around them. And when they grow up, this doesn't become a priority in their minds as well. Actually, they have biases. So, again, lack of awareness causing biases that stops people from, communicating with persons with disability or integrating them in society as well. So I think number one, the big challenge we have over here is literally awareness leading to biases amongst people who have no disabilities. And I think the second biggest challenge for persons with disability, especially in the education sector, is that we don't have enough trained resources. So when my mother was in school, and it was years ago, the way she was being taught is the same way a lot of deaf schools are still teaching their kids, which is that the teachers would write the content on the whiteboard and the kids just copy it and they have no idea what each word means. And it's only because the teachers have lack of understanding of sign language. They're not teaching in sign language. We do have, some schools who are doing a brilliant job with that. However, I think we need to bring more skilled, trained resources in our government schools as well, who are, in smaller cities, smaller towns, teach them sign language so that when they're teaching content to school students, deaf kids, it could be good. If they're from a very young age taught math, science, English well, we can have deaf individuals entering the IT industry, right? IT is all about computer coding. We have so many tech companies coming up to us and asking us if we have deaf resources, and they would love to hire, website designers, UI UX designers who are deaf, because it's all based on computer. You don't need to communicate with anyone. It's just you write on emails and you get the work done. However, sadly, we don't have that many resources who are well trained to understand the logics of coding. And you can't teach them once they're adults. It has to come from a very young age. So I think the second biggest challenge is that educational system for the deaf community still lags behind, and we need to have more trained resources, and we need to stop looking at deaf individuals like, oh, they're very good beauticians or painters, or they're very good with swing machines. We need to look beyond that. We need to look at things that could lend them with like great white collar jobs, because literally I'm so grateful and happy to share this, that the banking industry in Pakistan, through State Bank of Pakistan, they have a 2% quota for persons with disability. However, so many banks want to hire beyond because they're seeing good retention. It's a good business case. However, they lack finding the right talent, because in our schools we don't have banking education for the deaf. So we now are, Connectures trying to partner with training institutes for banking so that we can train them and get them landed into good, sustainable jobs. However, I wish it was done for them since their early age, and we didn't have to do so much.
Yeah, supply chain view of it, that how you're going to actually keep on bringing the talent if it's from the beginning, right? So it's from zero. This is very interesting. And as I was listening to you, something came into my mind. My brain joined these dots sometimes in weirdest forms. But I was going through this stat that Gen Z, 80% of them don't prefer to go on a phone call anyway, right? They prefer texting. And even in the customer support element, it's all about just messaging. They wouldn't pick up a phone call and try and solve the problem. So now the opportunity is actually even greater to go beyond just sewing and just being artistic kind of thing, or like painter per se. So that was something that was just going through my head.
You're right. I mean, so many of our apps that we use on a regular basis now, food hailing, ride hailing, they're like only chat available.
Right? So this
and it gets annoying. Like I'm so used to just calling them up to get the work done. But you're very right. Although I'm Gen Z, but I'm not for it. I'm the other.
You're the remainder 20% that they're talking about. So you see now, you have done, so I believe you have done over 1 million minutes,
Of signing, yeah.
of sign conversion, right? How does that sort of like, in terms of impact, what does that do for the community, the deaf
Absolutely.
community?
So what we realized when we got into, building Connect here was that the biggest challenge for the deaf community was communication. They use a different language than the rest of the hearing community. And in our lives, we have always seen translators, right? We all use Google Translate as well. That's just the best way of communicating. So it's not rocket science. However, nobody was thinking about how can you make that happen for sign language in Pakistan. So what happened was that one time on our Facebook page, so again, we never invested in the early age to build a website or anything. We just used our bootstrapped way of getting a Facebook page. So on our Facebook page, there was a deaf person who reached out and he said that he wants to get a debit card, but the bank manager cannot understand him. So he asked me to interpret for him. However, he lived in Gujranwala, which is, in Punjab, so north, and I live in Karachi, which is south. So, of course, my first response to him was like, this is impossible because I can't travel all the way for a 5 minute of conversation. So he messaged back and said, I'll just get you on a video call. I'll go to the bank manager and you just interpret our conversation. Actually, I come from a banking family. So my mother, she was a banker. So I have seen that being a banker, although, just because she was deaf, she had a hard time to get a debit card, even because she was a banker, but she couldn't get it. So I had my biases that, he's in Gujranwala. It's still like a smaller city as compared to Karachi. So how will the bank manager facilitate? However, I said yes. He went to the manager. We got on a video call on Facebook Messenger and I interpreted the entire conversation. And the first thing that bank manager said was, oh, that's it? He wants a debit card? He's been coming to me for a year now and I could not understand him. That's not an issue. I'll get his account made. And within a week, his debit card was issued. When we saw that, we realized that the communication part is a challenge, but we really, really need to do, facilitate in a way that we can support people all across the country without having to rely on having a physical interpreter with them. So we built that concept into having like a virtual interpreter in your pocket. So we built, not the connector application directly, but we had a WhatsApp number that we went on Facebook with. We told our community, if you need to have interpretation, just call us on our WhatsApp number. And I mean, we were so shocked to see the kind of calls we started getting every single day. And not from your Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad. We were getting calls from, Sakkar, we were getting calls from Multan, Bhavalpur, Swat, Skardu, like everywhere the deaf community called us, and it was always for something very important. So a deaf person called us and told us that I am at home with my mother-in-law and she's not feeling well. Can you please call an ambulance to come so that we can take her to the hospital? And there were so many instances that made us realize that if this helpline number did not exist, how would he have called an ambulance, right? And we collected all of this data, and using that, we got a grant and we built what is now known as Connector application. And it provides online sign language interpretation. So every single day when a deaf person walks into a bank and he needs to get a debit card, he can just use the bank's available Connector app and connect with an interpreter who interprets the conversation. So 1,000,000 minutes of interpretation just, translates into all of the deaf community and all of the cases that we were able to solve just by using this application. And like I said, the use cases are so immense. It's again, healthcare, banking, jobs, the amount of interviews we have interpreted using this application. Because before this, whenever a deaf person used to go to the interviewer, he would always say, why didn't you bring your parent with you? Who would we talk to? How would we know what you want? And then they'll reject the CV. Or if a deaf person comes in, they'll try to ask a question, and because he can't hear and explain himself, they would think that their IQ is low and they're, not qualified to do the job. But now at least they can walk into spaces, have, interviews with dignity, tell how talented they are. And I think the only missing gap always has been communication, translation, interpretation, and the Connector applications, alhamdulillah, doing that on a regular basis. And all the brilliant interpreters at Connector who make that happen, right? Like, I think the kind of journey my sign language interpreters go through every single day is also something to be highlighted, because they are translating such, you know, stories that comes with so much pain. We had a deaf girl who was captivated in her house and not allowed to leave, and she got in touch with us, and we, you know, got in touch with Punjab police because it happened in Punjab, and they were able to rescue her and get her into a women's shelter. So for our interpreters and for myself to think that, okay, if the application did not exist, you know, I mean, because at the end of the day, we're still in Karachi, right? And we're facilitating a call there. It's all due to technology, and we're very happy that we're able to do that. And I think there's just so much more to be done. And world needs to come together towards that. There's so much happening around AI. Connecture has been so passionate about, you know, building the Google Translate for sign language. We have built a model that can translate sign language to text just using your webcam camera. So no gloves, no big cameras, nothing. Just your regular camera can actually translate sign language to text. However, to bring it to a global level, because we're building this in Pakistan, we're testing it in Pakistan, but to bring it to the global level, we definitely need support from the tech companies to have, you know, faith in such an idea. I know there are some tech companies who are focused towards, you know, AI for disability inclusion, but I think they also need to look at countries like Pakistan, where passionate youth exist who, you know, have such great talent, but maybe not the right connection or not the right resources. But this is something that we're doing, and we want, you know, to fast pace the work, and we can only do it through the right connections, right support with the global tech companies as well. I think that's something all tech companies in Pakistan go through as a challenge as well, right? We don't have all of the headquarters here, all of the right headquarters in the right country in the region even to get our work done.
So, you know, one, and excuse my ignorance, right? So one question just coming to mind. So literacy rate is an issue when it comes to emerging markets, right? But then you talk about literacy with disability.
Yeah.
So small little things, you would think that one can just write it up and communicate. They're not able to do that, and hence your solution is fitting in. Is that the right understanding, or have I missed it?
110%. And I think thank you so much for saying that, because so many times people come and tell us that, but they can read captions, they can read subtitles. Why do we really need sign language? So first of all, your point is absolutely correct. Literacy is always a challenge. And in Pakistan, like I said, we don't really have a lot of schools that can cater to this community and teach them, you know, spoken and written language to comprehend. So that becomes a challenge for sure. However, because, you know, they all have WhatsApp, they keep on learning sign language from each other, picking up words. So in Pakistan today, the deaf community is more fluent with sign language as compared to, you know, written language or written communication. And it's not only in Pakistan, even if you look globally, you know, deaf people always say sign language is our first language. Just like you and I, you know, if I watch a Turkish drama and I have to watch, you know, I have to read subtitles the entire time listening to Turkish language, at one time I'll also have fatigue and I'll also get tired that, hey, I want this in my language. The deaf people have the same feeling that we want this in our language. Why do we have to adjust to the ways of the world, you know, that, hey, we don't want to spend on sign language, subtitles, there you go. But, you know, why don't you provide us things in our language as well for better understanding? And also, I think we don't realize that spoken language or signed language has more depth and beauty than a written communication can have, or, you know, put together. So you get more feels when you're having a conversation rather reading an article about the work of Azima Dhanjee and connect here, right? You would like to listen to it to get the feelings, expressions, the depth, the passion behind it. And it's the same with the deaf community. They feel the passion, they understand the passion through sign language. So globally, this is what I've seen. This is the reason why CNN, BBC, they all have sign language interpreters on their news channels. Although they have subtitles, they have headlines, but they realize that just like the anchor, the host is speaking and getting the message across, the deaf community deserves the same.
Yes, I think I'm going to butcher the numbers, but the sensory sort of neuromotors that we have, about 11 million, and 10 million of them are actually associated with your vision.
Oh, wow.
So, with that particular element that you're talking about, because this is like a lot of passion and you can literally translate, which writing doesn't do. So I'm just
Absolutely.
sort of connecting that with that this is just the reality
Yeah.
of the situation, that reading gets boring because that's their language
I
basically, right?
think it's very important to put ourselves in their shoe as well, right? So when we say, hey, subtitles should be enough for a deaf person in a movie theater, we need to ask ourselves that if we're paying a ticket to watch a movie, would we be interested to just read it, or we would really like to listen and understand it? Putting yourself in their shoes also help having something I called a disability lens on, right? So we are looking at everything with an angle of, hey, if a person with disability has to face this, how would it go for them?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think the reason, I suppose, the world is not really taking these things into consideration. Of course, there's a lot of pain, and there are a lot of problems that sort of consume the energy for the individuals, but lack of empathy, right? So people, if you have lack of empathy, you're never going to actually be thinking about it. But again, you taking the initiative, showing the example, now people who never would have thought of, they will think about these things, right? That how simple little thing,
Yeah.
out of ignorance that we do, has a huge amount of impact. We can just walk around and just make comments like these, that subtitles should be enough, when in reality it's just a basic fundamental ask, right, for someone who actually
Absolutely.
has that. I'm going to share a personal experience with you. I did my walima here, right? So my wife doesn't come from Pakistan, right? So we had a very simple nikah, and I had a walima here. And we decided to do a walima day rather just a walima function as we would do traditionally. And that's just a reception dinner per se, walima, for people who don't
Yeah.
understand, right? So we decided to do the full day. So we spent it into 3 chunks. So we spent it in an orphanage with the girls. Only 16, 17 girls live there, in a very sort of like difficult situation in terms of the finances and help they would get. Then we went to, there is a hospital with children with the mental disability. It's Darul Sukoon, I
Yeah,
believe,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So we went there, and then we finished our day at a blind school somewhere in Jahaz Chaurangi. It's somewhere in Water Pump or Jahaz Chaurangi.
Okay.
So we went to that blind school, but we actually had dinner with them, right? And we brought those blind children. But the fascinating part for me, for us, basically as a couple, we were thinking to create an example for our family members, to have that inclusivity sort of understanding, that how we aimlessly spend tons of
Yeah.
money onto things which doesn't even bring that
Yeah.
intrinsic happiness. So a day before, or a couple of days before, two things were very exciting. Number one, even my nephew, who was about 3 years of age, we were making bags for those children we were
Yeah.
going to be visiting, like gift bags. But when we went to do the shopping, even the biggest of the biggest stores, and I'm talking about now blind individuals, we couldn't find something appropriate. And it was an embarrassing moment for me to, after having understood what I have understood in life, and life has been very kind to me, for me to not even know that what I should be buying for them. And I was just researching and asking people. And then when we did get the understanding, we couldn't find it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So we just made do with it, took the help, and just gave it. And those children were over the moon, right? And I think they did a performance for us, and we were just I was just sitting around with them. So I think sometimes what happens is that small little things or actions, or if you just make it a purpose, sort of make a world of a difference. So again, I was very much looking forward to our conversation because of these sort of observations that I've had. I haven't been able to do anything about it yet, but learning from your experiences and getting educated, and see that how we can make more of an inclusive sort of like a society.
Absolutely. I mean,
makes
you
it work.
meet so many innovators, right? Even for them to realize that whatever they're innovating or whatever new technology they're bringing to the world, it doesn't have to be only for persons with disability, but whatever they're doing, make sure to know that they're also your market, and you just need to have few accessibility features to ensure it reaches to them as well. And I've started saying this to so many of my friends as well, who are creating new things. I always tell them that, you're always worried about the downloads on your application. Will we get enough downloads? But only imagine if you think about this sector as well, that, hey, we're building a technology. None of our competitors have made their apps accessible for this sector. But if we make our app accessible, we also get all of those numbers that are untapped. I think we need to start thinking about it practically. It's not only out of, oh, it looks good and that's why I'm doing it, but it's also a win-win situation in all cases.
And I think, you know what, you're very good at articulating your thought processes, right? And how you are striking the balance between the practicality and not just do it because it needs to be done. But I personally think people should literally be considerate enough, right? They should be able to comprehend naturally, because this is where the well-functioning societies are actually where we
Yeah.
take care of the people who are the weakest, or per se,
But
right?
I mean, the reason why I do this is because, I mean, of course, you need to have the empathy, and, this is something we need to do because it is good. However, when things around you go bad, you realize that, hey, we don't really need to do the good anymore because we're struggling ourselves. And this is like something I've said in a very simple way, but it happens to the largest of companies, right? So I don't want to quote it over here, but we have a very big tech company, based out of US, something that we use every single day. They were also the first ones to think about, inclusion, because it was something good to do. However, they were not able to build a business case out of it, which is why when they were facing hard times and their profits were going down and they had to do budget cut, this is the first thing that they kicked out of their system, inclusion and accessibility of persons with disability, because they looked at it as something good to do but not something needed. I think that's why we really need to start looking at it from the perspective that, hey, it's also needed. It's also a business case. It does brings us value. And once that starts happening, I think we would see sustainable impact in the disability space as well.
Self-enforcing wheel that you're creating, that even the hard times comes, nothing is getting chopped out, and
Exactly. It stays, right? Because it makes business sense out of it as well.
And here is another perspective, and I'm all for what you are saying, but as you said, right, people with disabilities existed for as long as we can remember. If we were to look at this world as a village, and if the use cases are already there, and if there are other people who are already doing it, and they are not just doing it for the sake of generating sort of returns, and again, economic activity will happen. Okay, that's should be secondary, thought. Again, I'm just like this, right? I'm not saying that you ignore it. Bankrupt companies cannot live their vision. I totally get it. But why do you do something makes a world of a difference.
Yeah, that's true. It
right?
has to come from your passion,
it
your
has
inside.
To, 100%, right? So currently, on an economic sort of view, if we ignite that spark, I fear, and I could be wrong, but I fear it will be short-lived, right? Because us human beings are emotional creatures. We eat logic for breakfast, right? So this is where my thought process.
I respect that. I think I just look at it as something that will make things sustainable. Yeah, that's just my perspective.
And I think it's dead on. And I think, look, there is no such thing as an
one
original
way or the other.
100%, different perspectives. But it is sad because on a global level, something which is a necessity, we're not talking about something which is not in a box of necessity, right?
Exactly.
Something which is a necessity, a right of a living being.
It's a need, right? It's not a want, it's a need.
It's a need, right? we still have to justify it with the
That's
return.
true. That
You know,
is.
so that's where my sort of thought process is coming from. If that
Yeah,
makes
I
sense.
mean, you can only imagine as a child of deaf adult how sad I feel when I look at things like that, right? Like, oh, it's so, like when I started Connect here, people constantly asked me, like, why do you want to work for a niche group? So for them to call my parents a niche group, I think things like those always made me question. And I really hope that more people think like you that as well, that it's a need. It's not a want, it's a need of the time.
And how do you deal with this when you talk about? So again, we live in a world where everything is transactional. So how do you deal with it when you go to the investors, the people who are actually also? Have you raised any funds? Is it like something on an equity base, or is it something? How has your journey been when it comes to this
Yeah,
particular light?
so Connector is still like completely owned by my co-founder and I. We have been very fortunate to get a lot of, funding through student funds because we started it at a very early age. And then we also got some global grants as well. When we went to the investors, number one, we weren't able to find the right kind of investors who wanted to invest in social enterprises, impact based business. So this was the story of 7 years ago. The story now is that we have very few investors who understand disability tech as well. However, it is growing. From where Connector comes in and my co-founder and I come in, we have spoken to a lot of investors and we have realized the kind of funds and value they wanted to bring in. Luckily, we had a lot of non-equity fund available in the world to do the same work. So we have been very fortunate in that way because we're also one of the pioneers in the industry. However, we do know that one point will come where just to scale it up and to expand it, we would need investor support. And we have had connection with global investors for it. Few 2 years ago only, I met with someone who said they are disability tech investors. So I thought that's pretty interesting, and I hope that in future years that only grows. However, at this point, of course, if you meet conventional investors who don't have the understanding of the impact space or the disability space, the questions are always like, why are you doing this? Why don't you make an NGO? You might get more funding that way rather having an enterprise out of it. So we have heard all that sort of question. Also, being a female entrepreneur, I have been questioned a lot of the times if I'm doing this out of emotions, like I feel, and I don't know why it's always.
Damn right, you want to do it out of emotions, right?
Yeah, but not in that way, in a very that different connotation, right?
I get
Oh,
you.
you're so passionate, you're so emotional about it that it can close down one day when the emotions die. So, however, at that time, of course, in our country, just for that gender balance as well, I had to bring a lot of numbers into play and practicality into play, and I still do that. However, I've realized it now that they were looking at emotion from a negative connotation. I don't have to do that. And I don't have to inspire the younger generation, either them being male or female, to not have empathy and emotion into business. I think that's one of the greatest traits I have as a business owner, and that has helped me to build a good team as well. However, I've heard all sorts of comments from investors. It was all about finding the right community, the right tribe of investors as well. We know a few of them only, so if there are more that exist, please reach out. At this point in our stage, we are very comfortable with we have recently gotten a grant by GSMA. So, the Global Mobile Consortium, they have funded us for a brilliant project. So we are focused on that as well. But in the near future, we do see going for the investor route as well. And when that happens, it would be loud on our social media, and we hope to find the right connections by that time. It has been about 8 years of our journey so far, so
It
I
shouldn't,
think
shouldn't be a problem. So just again, so are you cash flow positive in business currently?
so. Currently, we are expanding a lot. Where before that, until last year, we were cash flow positive, but right now we're burning some amount because of the grant we have gotten. We're building more technology, but entire goal is to sustain ourselves again. Back in 2020, we got a grant to build something now known as the Connector app, we used that to sustain ourselves and sustain our business until last year. We were cash flow positive. This year, we're again spending more to build new technology. But again, we're so, I think,
Frugal.
conventional and traditional in the way of our work that we spend very mindfully, that once the grant is over, we are able to, inshallah, sustain ourselves as well.
Frugality, it's very important. You want to be able to actually build a sustainable business that way.
I have a corporate mentor, and he made me realize that one of the reasons why a lot of corporates were still standing during COVID was because they had so many SOPs and traditional structures in place that kept them so strong during such a turmoil time in our lives, which was, COVID-19 as well. And that made me also realize that sometimes you can take a business decision. Again, I respect all startups, all enterprises, but I think our way is always to think about how can we sustain ourselves, because of course we need to realize there's a team and there are people and homes relying on us as well. So if we're spending and one day we're like, oh, we need to lay off a lot of people, that's not going to be good for the people who rely on us and who have trust and faith in this vision. We really need to think about them as well.
No, 100%. And having spent 7 years like you guys have, and getting to the stage where you have that unit economics working out, then it makes sense for you to even go blitz, and it makes sense for you to go for a scale if you need to put in the money, because
Yes.
it's not premature and it's something that has gone through an entire cycle if you were to look at the microcycle, right? So I think these fundamentals equally applies to all startups.
All startups.
And
all
if anybody
businesses.
is not seeing that, even after what has happened recently, they need to just understand the markets better before they go about raising funds, because you need to know the rules of the game that you're playing, right?
Yeah.
So
Someone once told me, don't get married to your idea. And I think that was the best advice, because your idea, your solution would pivot so much. I think you should be more married to the problem that you're trying to solve.
I couldn't have said it better myself, So what's the story with your co-founder? How did you two come about, and what do they have sort of to bring to the table or equation?
Absolutely. So Arham is the technical co-founder, as you like to say. He and I went to United States together as exchange students a decade ago or more. And that's where we met. And I always knew that Arham had passion for technology and social good. Like, that's something that drove him as well. He does not have any connection to the deaf community prior to, meeting me or my parents. And also he does not have persons with disability in his family. So he just comes from a perspective of being passionate about tech for good. And he's really, really, mashallah, good at his job as well. And he looks after the technical side of our business. So all the technology that we have built and all of the technologies we're planning to build, even the AI for sign language, that's his passion, his brainchild. He has spent 5 years of research into it. Again, we're the same age, so we're still in our we haven't crossed our 30s yet, so we're still young, passionate, doing it. And Arham also brings in a lot of creativity to the business. So of course he's looked at things from a creative way of getting the message across to the world. So we have a very active social media. If you follow Connect Here, you'll watch such funny scripts in sign language, and you would wonder, oh, deaf people also have, quirks and fun and all of that. So that was Arham's view, that we always look at person with disability with sympathy, or we think that they don't have fun or they don't enjoy, or they're not funny. So to bring that to the world as well. And also I think Arham brings a lot of sanity and grounds me as well in the kind of work that we do, when to take pauses, when to think about practical approaches, sustainability, because I'm the kind of person who wants to do everything at the same time. However, you need someone to ground you and tell you that, priority A, priority B, priority C. So alhamdulillah, we have that good balance in the business. Of course, we have arguments into the way that, because you're literally like, you're married into the business as well, and you have those arguments. However, I think those are also very important to keep you on your path. Also for your sanity check, having each other is also important. I have immense respect, for solo founders. I don't know if you have ever done any of your business completely alone?
I have tried to, but it's just like it's
It's
hell.
tough,
It's
right?
very tough.
So
Yeah.
I think I have immense respect for solo founders because I don't think I could have ever been a solo founder. And I always tell Arham that I want to join him for the next idea, the venture he has, because I have immense respect for him to support in this journey. Of course, it was the talents and a good diverse mixture of both that made Connecture happen today.
Looks like that you have found the right team, you're working on a very viable problem, and you're passionate about it, and you are just making sense of it all economically. So that's just a wonderful. Many congratulations
Thank
to
you.
you, and fair play to you. So what's the story with this concert, the South Asia's first concert for people with disability?
Yeah,
Yeah.
not only people with disability, but people with hearing loss. So we did a concert for deaf people.
Aha.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever watched a video with
No, I
like,
haven't.
no? Okay,
No.
so I definitely have to send you some or just look up, concerts in sign language. Coldplay does such a great job of it as well. So I've always been a Coldplay fan. And I used to see how they used to have sign language interpreters in their concert. And we realized that in Pakistan, if we could make such an experience like, music accessible to the deaf community, it would literally just break all of the ice. Like people being like, oh, we can't include deaf people here or there. So their basic limitation is they can't hear. But if music becomes accessible for them, which is all about listening, imagine how everything can be made accessible for them. So it was like a big shock and a reality check for the world out there. And it's so crazy that we did it in 2018. It's been years to it as well, but everyone still remembers it. However, when we decided to do this concert, we spoke about it on our Instagram. Every single person commented that this is such a weird, ridiculous idea. How can you make people who can't hear understand music? But when the concert happened with sign language interpreters on stage, them being, placed near the speakers, so vibrations, lights adjusted to the feels of the music, kid you not, there were 300 deaf people and 700 hearing community members, so 1,000 people together. And you could not tell among the crowd who was deaf, who wasn't deaf, because everyone was just dancing to the music together. I think that was such a powerful point. Forbes wrote about it, so many news covered it. And after that, it was a ripple effect. So every university started having sign language interpreters in their concerts. So alhamdulillah, it was just another way of showing to the world that everything is possible if you have your disability lens on.
Wonderful. More power to you. And you do sort of job fairs for the people as well?
So like I said, the percentage of people who are unemployed with disabilities is huge. So that is why we realized job placement was never one of our focuses. But when we were working with companies, we kind of realized that we need to get persons with disability acquainted to them. Because the question companies always asked us was, where are these people? Do they really exist in that amount of number? So of course, because I've studied at IBA, I've always seen these amazing job fairs happening and students getting an opportunity to interact with employers, but in a very professional manner. So we translated that career fair experience to a career fair for person with disability. We have already done 2 editions of it, served more than 3,500 individuals with disability, more than 50 companies. And the whole idea was to just connect them together, people with disabilities and corporates together. And I think my biggest success out of this career fair is not only the placements that have happened, but the request we have started getting from companies that you need to do your career fair bigger, you need to have counseling sessions in your career fair, you need to have interview panels in your career fair. And when I get such feedbacks from companies telling us to do more, of course, it's like people can also see it in a way that you weren't even thinking about it before this, and now you're telling us what to do. But I look at it from a way that, people have started, they have started getting serious about it, and they want, good results to come out of it. So whenever our corporate partners school us and tell us to do better, it makes me so happy because I know that they're taking it seriously. That's why they're schooling us.
This is such a wonderful piece of sort of like, thought process that you shared, right? So I often talk about 0 to 1, right? And I think 0 to 1 has the most amount of premium. And if entrepreneurs only understood that,
not only on a local scale but on a global scale. Because when you give something new to the world, you automatically position yourself as a leader. So
Yeah.
you are going off the well-worn path, but you're creating a path for the others to follow.
Absolutely.
Right? And that's what you just touched on. So this is so wonderful. So with that particular concept, where do you see this particular disability tech domain or a sector, in coming 5 to 10 years? What do
I
you
think
think?
it's only going to grow more. There will be more investments into it, and the whole world will see that. Again, like I said, it's a $1 billion missed opportunity, and I do see more players coming into market as well. It's not only players in US or UK, but I see players coming out of the global south as well. And there's so many I've met, and I've realized that it's only going to be growing more, being recognized more. And one of the best opportunities to invest in as well, to explore as well. And we just definitely need more people to come in and make those bets, to make it happen, to take those risks as well. We have taken risk with so many things around the world. I think this is something that we need more players to take risk in as well. I always meet these VCs, and I always tell them that within your portfolios you're already taking big risk, right? So if you're making 40 investments, only 1 or 2 out of them are going to be successful. So within that mixture, make some bets around this area as well, and you might be shocked. We just need to have more of those pioneers and first movers in the market as well. Even when we talk about Pakistan, the kind of technology Connecture is building today, we were the first movers. We were the first people to do it. But within a year of us doing it, we had competitors coming into the market. And I think at that time, as a 20, 21-year-old co-founder, I looked at it from a very different perspective. I was like, oh, competitors, that's so bad. We have always been taught that competitors are there to, take away your market share. However, later I realized that competitors were one of the validation of our concept into the market, and competitors also created more awareness about the kind of work that we do. So I think definitely a message for listeners out there as well, that A, disability tech market is going to grow and we need more bets into it, and B, as a founder, if you're listening to this, look at your competitors from a positive angle as well. They keep you on your foot, and that's what you want, right? You need to have checks that, hey, someone else is going to do it before us, and you go speed, and do more. And I'm so grateful of my competitors to have come into the market and, to have given that opportunity to connect here as well.
This is beautiful. And your sort of passion and the energy and the success story is inspirational, and I hope it turns into aspiration for many who
Inshallah,
also come from similar backgrounds, so they can actually understand the problems that exist and start taking them on one by one and make this a more equitable place than it is, right?
Absolutely.
So this is wonderful. So if, let's say today somebody wants to have this mindset shift around what we just talked about, and they want to start, whether in their personal life, whether in their places of education per se, or in the workplace, what is the first step do you think they can take to to make more inclusive space? What is that piece of advice would you have for people to sort of start doing?
So, of course, we talked about so many different things, but my piece of advice to everyone would be to, look at things around you, and not only from a disability perspective, but also the problems that exist around you, or they're personal to you as well. Don't only run towards things that the society has told us makes a lot of money, but also look at the things that are untapped, are still the problems around us in our society, and think about what you can do to solve it. And my first piece of advice or action would be, when you're listening to this podcast, definitely, you'll also have ideas coming to your mind about something you're passionate about. Listen to your gut feeling, right? Listen to what your body, what your gut feeling is telling you. Write it down on a piece of paper today while you're listening to the podcast. Don't leave it for later. right? Do it right now. Take that first step right now, even if it's as small as writing it down and then follow up on it. So many times we listen to such great things, such great events. We're so passionate, but the passion dies, or things we have learned, they die. But my first thing would be to look at things around you that you're passionate about, is close to you, and write it down and take action on it. If I can do it, if Azima can do it, I think anyone can do it. Honestly, everything that has been built or that's been provided to us today took a lot of efforts, but the universe also starts coming towards you when you're true to your passion and you're true to your gut feelings.
At Podcast for Phoenixes, we believe that what we do is for the 3% redefining possible. Okay? And as we come to the end of each conversation, we ask our departing guest that what are the 3 things you think that those 3% who are redefining possible should have in their toolkit. So the last guest we had, they said that they should have, the capability of introspection, being able to comprehend things before actually they happen, and then know the difference between the vision and objective that they might be working on. So these are the 3 pieces of advice they left our audience with, right? The same question goes to you. What are those 3 things any entrepreneur or person who is convicted in solving a problem, or the 3%, because you are the 3%, we believe, who redefined what's possible, right? So what do you think those three sort of skills they should have in their toolkit?
Number 1 is a problem solving skill set, right? Problems happen to all of us, right? So we need to move away from the mindset of making excuses and rather coming up with solutions and creative ways of making things happen. The second would be to also look at all the free tools available around you. We miss out on that, and this is my biggest message every time. Think about how you can do something without spending a lot of money, or without needing a lot of money. How can you bootstrap your way? And I think one of the biggest skill set is bootstrapping as well, and looking at the resources that are available around you at no cost. And the third biggest thing, I think, definitely is to stay humble in your journey. I think we need to talk about this more. Life can give you crazy surprises, can take you crazy places. And a lot of the times when you're going to these crazy places, you start forgetting about where you started the entire thing, and you stop becoming humble, or just remembering your roots. So having this skill set of being humble should be the number 1 priority in your journey. And when you stay grounded, when you stay humble to your reality, you would be shocked how far you go sustainably.
So you are saying have the problem solving skills.
Yes.
Number 2, be resourceful,
yes.
Super duper resourceful. And number 3, stay humble and don't let the success get to your head.
Yes.
These are the 3 things, right? So Azima, using technology just to build some fancy products isn't the goal. Building products which actually are accessible and useful for all, that's what you have just showed us today.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.